Okay, I am giving this thing a go. I have never done Facebook Live before, so I am a little bit nervous to be doing this, but I'm really glad you're here. If you're joining me live, if you're going to watch the recording, I just kind of thought I've had a lot of questions lately about meal planning and prep. And so I just figured I would put kind of together my thoughts and then share it here. So that is what I plan to do. Um, I am going to see if I can, if I can't share my screen, then I will post a PDF after we talk through some things. So when we're thinking about meal planning and prep and kind of making your nutrition work for you and be smarter, not harder, right? Something I've been kind of saying is it's really easy to say we don't have time for meal prepping or meal planning, right? But it really doesn't have to be this overwhelming thing. I think people talk about it all the time, and we see all of these containers and we see all of these things to support meal planning and meal prep, but it really doesn't have to be that hard. So I want you to think about two things, right? One, like what does good planning do for you? Normally, when you do a good job planning for something, it makes for a happy event, a happy time, and it's aligned to your goals, right? So if we think about meal planning in the same way, it's going to be something that aligns to your goals of maybe just making the week less stressful for you. And so if you spend some time on the front end doing that for yourself, it's actually going to save you time during the week because you're not going to be taking away from whatever it is that you're doing during the week, which is when we tend to be most busy. And it's also going to help you plan for food that's aligning to your goals nutritionally. So if you're working on something, it's going to give you time, some of that think time, instead of small pockets of think time. When you can do that kind of all chunked together, it's going to really help. And then when you think about what happens when we don't plan or when we don't do a great job planning, sometimes that's where things tend to go wrong, right? So you might skip planning ahead for your week and then you find yourself stressed about what you're going to have for dinner that night. Or you're going to grab food mindlessly and snack all afternoon because you're hungry and you haven't really planned for what it is that you're going to do. And then you also are going to be grabbing food that doesn't align to whatever goal you've set for yourself, right? Like you might find yourself at the vending machine at work, or you might find yourself, instead of packing a lunch, always going out to eat. And we know sometimes, even though eating out is a great thing to plan for, sometimes it's really easy to choose food off the menu that isn't aligning to our goals. So that's where planning ahead can really help you. Nobody wants to be hangry. And that's what happens a lot of the time is we don't start thinking about what do we want to eat until we're already hungry. And that's when we oftentimes don't plan for the right thing. So if you find yourself saying, I don't have time for this, it might mean that you're not really ready to prioritize your nutrition, and how you use your time matters. So you have to ask yourself, if you are truly planning to do that or planning to set a goal, or at the very least make your week feel a little less stressful and easier with the plan, then all you need to do is get started and think about what is it that you're prioritizing and really just go for it. Things get easier with practice. So one tip that I have for doing this is breaking meal planning or meal prepping down into kind of 3 different chunks. And in the notes that I have, it's kind of doing it over 3 days, but you can kind of think of it as 3 chunks, right? So your first chunk would be to make your plan. That might be where you're going to look at your calendar for the week ahead that you're planning for and figure out, do I have any special events? For example, my meal plan last week included Thanksgiving because that was a day that we needed to plan for. It also included a day of leftovers because I knew we were going to be munching on stuff. And so knowing kind of what your schedule allows you to be planned for is important. You might need to plan leftovers on a day that you have a lot going on at night. You also want to plan for some meals that you enjoy. Don't take the fun out of what you eat simply because you're meal planning. You may want to look in your pantry and decide, are you going to plan ingredients around things you already have? If you're a Costco shopper like me, then you might already know, like, you've got ground turkey in the freezer. And so you want to make sure that you plan a meal that uses ground turkey, for example. And then you might look for a fun recipe. You can go on Pinterest, you can search for some food bloggers, or you can use the recipes like that I have access to in my nutrition plan, right? I tend to look for something that's fun and we go from there. So that's your first chunk, is making your plan. And then your second day or chunk is going shopping, right? So you use your plan to map out your grocery list. You cross off the items that you already have in your pantry or in your freezer. And then another tip is, when you're at the store, you tend to shop the outer aisles of the grocery store. That tends to be where the fresher ingredients are in the grocery store, rather than all of those central aisles where you tend to find the junk food. Because I don't know about you, but that's where I tend to see the sales, and I'll grab the extra, bags of chips and things that weren't on my list, but they're on sale. So we have to make sure we grab them. And then the third chunk is your prep day, right? So for some people, getting their groceries home and chopping everything up, as well as grilling or prepping food, is what works for them, right? For other people, that doesn't work for them. They just want the food in the fridge and they're going to prep a little bit each day. So you have to kind of decide what kind of meal prepper you are. Are you somebody who wants it all done, where you can pull things out and throw the chopped together meal and look like somebody on a cooking show when it's time for dinner? Or do you want to be able to chop a little bit when it is time for dinner? Or do you need grab and go, right? Like, do you need things that are ready to go? For example, like breakfast for me needs to be ready to go. So I tend to kind of like have that all ready, and then I can like walk out and grab it from the refrigerator and throw it in the oven, whatever it needs to be. Although I will say, like, we're a microwave family. Like, we're totally a microwave family. So, but you have to decide who you are. And it might take a minute. Like, you might have to try some different things too and see, like, are you somebody who needs both, right? Like, so what is it that needs to be grab and go or prepped for you? And then are there some things that can be left for the rest of the week? And then an extra tip that I have, I tend to make my meal plan in Google Sheets. I'm a Google Drive fanatic. And so I do that so that I can make a copy of things and I can make a copy of my grocery list. So if you have some kind of digital tool that you're using to make your lists, it actually will save you time the next time you're doing chunk number one. So I totally suggest doing that so that week to week you have duplicates. Because inevitably, like, I eat the same thing for breakfast every day. So, like, I know we're going to need some veggie sausage, we're going to need some oatmeal, we're going to need some bananas in the house when I go grocery shopping. So then that helps me keep track of things that I know we need in the house week to week. So think for a minute about what your nutrition goals are, right? Like, this is pulling in my educational SMART goals, right? Set your goals. What is it that you are looking to do? And then ask yourself, are your actions matching what your goals are asking you to do? So I'll give you a nutritional example, right? Or a meal planning example. So if my goal was, I want to eat healthy breakfast to start my day, okay, that's my goal. Some action steps that I might need to do or ask myself to make sure that that happens would be, I would have to determine, okay, do I have time for prep for this healthy breakfast that I'm planning to have? Or do I need grab and go? So that would be an answer that I need to have to then help me determine some next steps. Then I would need to know, do I want to eat the same thing every day? Or do I want to have choices? Or do I want to plan to switch it up every day? And what kind of prep is required for each thing? Then once I know that, I would make my list. I would go to the grocery store, and then I would prep for whatever kind of meal prepper I decided I was for the breakfast that I had chosen to do for my healthy breakfast. So that's a really easy example. And notice that my goal was not like, I want to eat healthy to lose weight. That's not what this is about. If my goal is to eat a healthy breakfast, then I start there. And I start with one easy goal, not I need to revamp my entire life. So if this is kind of new for you, then you have to just get started with like one thing. For me, planning dinner is stressful. Like my whole family, we can figure out breakfast and lunch, but it's that evening time when my two boys get crazy, and I get stressed about what it is that I'm going to put on the table for us to eat. That's when I need to be planned for. So that's one thing that I made sure when I was starting off meal prepping that I prioritized, even if it wasn't healthy at first. I was like, I just need to get used to meal planning and prepping and all of that. And then I can figure out some healthy recipes to throw in. And I just started with like one recipe a week of things I wanted to try. And then I've kept them all in my digital copy of my Google Sheet so that I just reuse those links and those things that I've found. So trying to find ways to systemize whatever it is that you're doing helps you with your time. And you can build it as you go so that you have a reference when you get back to it. The other thing that I suggest is choosing easy meals. So adding leftovers as a part of your plan. I get really frustrated when we have a ton of extra food in the house and nobody's eating it. And so I only choose 2 to 3 days during the week, during the work week, that's a planned meal. And there are days in between. If I cook 2 meals in a row, you better believe there's going to be a leftover day on my meal plan because I want to make sure that we're planning to eat it instead of throwing away a ton of food at the end of the week. So I definitely suggest planning for some leftovers, especially if you tend to like follow the recipe to a T and it serves 8 or whatever, and you're only cooking for 4 or you're only cooking for 2 or just 1, right? Like it's so frustrating. I personally don't like to like figure out the calculations of cutting everything down. So I would rather like follow the recipe so I know I'm doing it right and then have the leftovers. Cooking some frozen meals. So like we keep frozen fish and frozen vegetables, like the steamable vegetables, we keep those in our freezer. And so sometimes I plan a meal and then that night I'm like, I don't feel like making that. And we instead have some fish and some veggies, and we know like we kind of met the goal of what we wanted to do, but we also made sure that it was easy and we could like throw it in the toaster oven. So looking for some healthy options to have in the freezer or taking your leftovers that you put in the freezer and pulling them back out, I think is a really great thing to do. You may also want to do snack meals. Like maybe you don't need, it doesn't have to be like a super pretty thing, right? Like sometimes my meal is like rolled up pieces of turkey, some carrots, and an apple on the side with some peanut butter. And there's nothing wrong with that. So, don't feel like it has to be this beautiful salad or this beautiful thing that you've put together. If you have seen, now that we're getting into school and stuff, my kids, everybody's doing like bento boxes for lunch, right? Where it's like compartmentalized food. Like that would totally be the kind of lunch I would take to school. Would be my own bento box with specific little compartmentalized like snack lunches. You may also want to look for recipes that are sheet pan or skillet meals, right? Like putting everything on one sheet pan and then it goes in the oven together. It cooks the salmon all at the same time as the veggies, or a one skillet meal where you start off with your ground turkey and onions and you add a whole bunch of things to it. Those are some of my favorite things to do. Like one of the recipes I added this week is healthy egg roll in a bowl, and that's how it is, like all in one skillet with a bag of coleslaw. I don't shred my own carrots. I don't make my own coleslaw when it calls for it. Like I buy the bag and I'm okay with that. You may also want to think about like crock pot or instant pot foods that can be thrown in. If you have a weekend day, throw it in the crock pot and give yourself some hours so that you plan it ahead of time and then it's cooking and done when you're actually hungry and ready to eat. Or make some salads ahead of time and plan to have them with some deli meat or like some hard-boiled eggs or something. Whatever it is, just think about things that are easy for you so that it doesn't feel overwhelming. Okay, so my people who are with me, drop in the comments. What do you feel like is one action step you think you can take towards whatever goal you have about meal planning this week? Yeah, egg roll in a bowl is like my saving grace. Well, think about it, because if you're setting a goal, right, like the healthy breakfast one, then think about what are some action steps? What's the first action step you can take to get yourself started? Um, and then one quote that I want to kind of leave you with is this one from Eleanor Roosevelt. She says, "It takes as much energy to wish as it does to plan." And I feel like that is a really important quote, because I feel like we that's what we do, is we tend to wish our goals away, right? Like we say like, "Oh, I wish I just did a better job meal planning." But we don't actually do anything to do it. So I think you just have to start. And I think starting with one small thing, love what you guys put in there, just trying to make 2 to 3 meals instead of being overwhelmed by 5. Yes, like don't plan a meal every night. I sometimes put on there like we're going to get takeout, and I don't know from where, right? But like plan for it. It's okay to eat out, or it's okay to say like question mark, you know. Sometimes on a Sunday, I'm not ready to think about what I want to eat Saturday. So I put a question mark, and as we get closer, I figure out what it is that we want to do. And sometimes it's takeout or pizza or something. And then, yeah, cooking chicken, like getting some of that stuff prepped so that it's easy. If you're going to top some salads with some chicken, or if you're going to make a chicken salad for the week or a pita, having some of that prepped ahead is so smart. I had my hard boiled eggs prepped, and I chopped up my bananas for my oatmeal too. So, like, those are done for the week, and I can just add them to what it is that I'm going to eat this week. Well, so the last thing that I just want to share is that I'm here to be a help. So if you're looking for a support system, or you're looking for some additional accountability with nutrition, please reach out and shoot me a message. I'll drop my email in the comments, and I'm here for questions. And I'll make sure to get anyone who needs it and sends me a message to get you a PDF of the notes. I'm sorry I didn't share my screen. Still figuring out how to do that once you go live. Maybe it needed to be part of my setup, but felt like it was important that you saw me too. And I think Facebook Live doesn't do the whole video with the screen thing, so maybe I'll have to use a different platform next time. But I appreciate you. I'll drop my website in the chat too. And feel free to hit me up. Thanks for joining, my 2 people. You made my day. Just reach out if you need anything.